And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast live from the Galleria Mall, I think, which seems like a fake mall name, like it would be the mall in the Heathers or something, in Cleveland, Ohio, where the finals is essentially over. Bryan Colangelo just resigned, and wow, do we have some stuff to talk about with. I'm very happy that both these people are here. Chris Herring from 538 is a regular guest on the Lowe Post podcast. It's been a while for Ethan Sherwood Strauss of The Athletic, the biggest comeback in sports this year. Ethan Strauss, new father, new job. How are you doing?
Very little sleep, but very happy to be back in it. It's a great time of year.
How old's the kid?
10 weeks right now.
So it's just madness in your house.
Yeah, and whenever I say how many weeks it is, inevitably my wife cuts in that it's actually 1 or 2 more weeks than I think, because I've just lost all sense of time completely.
So I have no useful parenting advice. I'm objectively a mediocre parent. Okay, just one piece of NBA parenting advice.
Yeah,
never ever be like, oh, honey, I'm really tired. I was up late at the finals last night. I had to file my story. Just never do it. It does not work. It does not go over well. It sets you back a lot. We're going to talk about the finals, but Bryan Colangelo just resigned in one of the most bizarre, and honestly, I find the story sad more than anything else. I'm empathetic toward him. All of us go through moments of insecurity and being too sensitive to what the public say. Some of us are better than others at training ourselves not to care. I can't imagine what the state of his marriage is, given that the law firm apparently concluded that it is very likely, if not certain, that these are his wife's accounts. He will not ever be a general manager again in the NBA. I could see some team hiring him as a consultant down the line, a la Danny Ferry. It's just a sad story, but was either one of you, it doesn't matter to me, was there any other outcome here? Should I guess it is his wife's Twitter. Should he pay the price for that?
I think that's just how it works in the NBA. I think Amin El-Hassan has often brought up this scenario with the Suns, where there was somebody who worked for the Suns and their son divulged private information, and she ended up getting fired, and there was a recognition that it was unfortunate that it happened to her, but that's just the way it is. That's just somebody has to take the fall, because secrecy is just paramount in the NBA, and you need to trust that confidential within the family info stays in there. But I like that you brought up the empathy, because the internet is a little bit remorseless, I would say. And a lot of people were having fun with this story. This was a story that titillated people, and I don't blame them, because it was in many ways quirky and wacky, and it's hard to feel too much sympathy for somebody who might have the insecurities evinced in the burner accounts. But it is sad. It is a bummer on a micro level, and I like that you at least brought up that as a human being, I do think that this would be a lot to go through, and it could be easily dismissed because it's not like perhaps anything grievous or tangible happening, but it's got to be terrible to be at the center of this shame spiral.
You're empathetic on some level, because, and I said this, I tweeted this to somebody.
Big mistake. All right, you tweeted it to somebody. You don't even know who. Big mistake. You're going down the road.
At least I did it on my account, so we won't have to hire a firm to figure it out if I have to be let go. How many of us don't tell a significant other what happens in our daily life? Good, bad, or ugly. And so that you can kind of understand that, and we don't have to normally pay a price for something like that. Something
you're supposed to do that.
That's what you would
It's
hope.
unhealthy to not confide in your significant other.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so that part of it is really tough. The flip side of it is what Ethan was just saying, is that how can you walk back into that front office with those players? I mean, Joel Embiid is someone that probably doesn't need a burner account, because he just speaks his mind and has already kind of made a passing reference at this on his Twitter account. But how can you walk back into that role and have the trust of the players, have the trust of some other members of the front office? And frankly, what I kept waiting to happen here, it seemed like it become a legal issue, and maybe that was part of the reason that this kind of dragged out so long, is that because it's not something that he did directly, that he tweeted about, you can imagine that he would make an argument for his job, and it could maybe turn into a legal argument, I would think. And so I wonder if that's part of the reason that this took so long to kind of play out. But I also don't know realistically. I mean, the players' union, I would think, if he had kept his job, then maybe they would want to get involved in this, because there was some information out there that shouldn't have been out there, regardless of how it got out to the public.
The law firm statement says that his wife admitted to establishing the accounts and posting the content of those accounts. Forensic evidence, that sounds very sophisticated, corroborated her admissions. We cannot conclude that Mr. Colangelo was aware of the accounts prior to the May 22nd press inquiry. He denies any such awareness. We have not observed any forensic evidence establishing that he had knowledge of the Twitter accounts prior to that date. So this may be, believe it or not, legitimately he didn't know.
Yeah.
However, to me, it's part of the penalty for being the boss, is that if she had just been anonymously defending him, like, hey, moron, Sam Hinkie didn't do that great of a job, this guy's a great GM, or, go Sixers, and, stop making fun of his collars and all that he keeps his job. It's the sensitive and private information about the players, and part of being the boss is like that information flow is on you. Like, the buck stops on you. I don't see any other way this could have ended. I will say that Sixers brass was very sensitive to the idea of there did not seem to be any public support for Bryan keeping his job, and the flip side of it, they would have had a hell of an embarrassing thing to explain had he kept it. That influenced this, but I never saw any other outcome. Once it was clear that it was the wife, I just didn't see how else it could end.
Yeah, both things are almost true in an odd way, where you can look at him without too much opprobrium and say, I see how this could have happened. I see how someone's significant other, who might not be sensitive to all the particularities of your job but wants to defend you, might do this thinking it's not that big a deal. I could actually see that happening. Of course, she should have known better if that was the case and if she was the one saying it, but I could see how such a thing might occur. But at the same time, I like how you put it. It is the penalty for being the boss.
Being the boss comes with great stuff. You get lots and lots of money, lots and lots of power, and lots and lots of credit when things go well. Yeah. This is also part of it.
I will say, though, that there is, when I look at the reaction to this, I can see the unmarried people versus the married people, where there's this naivete from some that have evinced this idea that you don't share that with your wife. I'm sorry, the way it works in a marriage, whenever, and you should know this, if you're ever sharing something with someone and telling them, don't tell your wife about this, or this is just between us, they are going to tell their wife. That is what's going to happen. That's just the reality of the situation. So I don't think that's damnable. I don't think that's damnable necessarily that he shared such.
No, but he's on the hook for the information flow, and the stuff about Fultz and the trainer and the tapes they have of him shooting on his back and all that, like, there are like 25 people in the world who know that. You've got
to tell your wife. If you know your wife's a bit of a loose cannon like that, maybe you just have to say, look, that this right here cannot leave the room. So maybe it does. It's an odd situation where in some ways he might be a little bit blameless, but in other ways, with great power comes great responsibility, and one of the responsibilities is that information does not get out ever.
One thing with this too that I think about with Colangelo, I mean, this is a huge summer for the Sixers too. I mean, I'd like to think that even if this was the Sixers of 4 or 5 years ago, that you really, really seriously consider making this change. But particularly this summer, I mean, LeBron made a joke about it.
You can't. You just can't. It's untenable. It's untenable.
Summer at this point. I mean, this is a team that has a real chance to do something and to land real talent here, and they've already shown that they have a lot of it on their roster. You had to make this change. It's kind of more a question of how.
I think the fascinating thing, not fascinating, but obviously they're going to get a new GM or president, whatever the title ends up being. They will definitely look at David Griffin, who coincidentally has a good relationship with LeBron James, who coincidentally is down 3-0 in the finals and hopeless. They'll look at some other candidates. Mike Zarin's name has been floating around. He was maybe the other finalist with Hinkie back when the process began. That would be a fascinating decision for Mike, because the Celtics are on the verge of perhaps contending for the championship next season. Does he want to leave that? There will be everyone. I think there will be GMs under contract whose agents will try to get them out of their contracts with an eye on getting this job. It's that good of a job. When is the last time a GM job this good opened up ever? No. It reminds me, to a lesser extent, of the brief period where Steve Kerr's back injury was so bad that people started to wonder, like, is he just going to have to retire? And then people started saying, oh my God, this is the greatest potential job opening in the history of professional sports coaching. It just doesn't happen. So I think I would predict we'll get some wild card candidates in addition to the obvious ones. Also of interest, they have a giant front office of very qualified. Their analytics department alone is like 10 people. They have Ned Cohen that they hired from the league office. Mark Eversley is there. Lots of other people are there. And I do think there is some question about Hinkie resigned, I guess. This is now 2 resignations, technically. A lot of resignations. Hinkie resigned, you cleaned house. All Hinkie's people left with him except for 1 or 2. Do you want to do that? Like, there's got to be some value in, like, you just can't keep cleaning house. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, promoting from within has its own value, and it's motivating, the idea that you might rise through the ranks, certainly. But, God, I just feel that David Griffin LeBron situation looms so large, and that might blot out any other outcomes. Because if that's the play, then there's not going to be a lot of consideration for any other play. But if that's not the play, what you said definitely holds true, that it's going to be a wide-ranging search, I would imagine.
We can look the time to look back on Brian's tenure there, which was not very long. We haven't had a lot of time to digest this. Drafting Ben Simmons was like the 3 of us could have done that. Really, any of us could have done that. The Redick signing, all that stuff. I mean, it's going to come down to Fultz. I mean, that's going to be the defining move. And if that remains, if trading that pick, the extra pick that the Celtics have coming, for a player that you might have been able to select anyway at 3, because the Celtics were going to take Tatum at 1. I don't care what they say. They've hinted at it anyway that they would have taken Tatum at 1. It's either going to go down as like a small error that you recover from, and everyone just sort of puts it on your ledger, like, oh, remember they made that mistake. Even R.C. Buford makes mistakes. He picked Luis Scola and traded him, blah blah. Or it's going to become your Greg Oden, and that's it forever. So,
and maybe, I mean, potentially worse and more crippling than that, in the sense that this is a team that at least your front 2 guys have like championship caliber talent, and if all you needed to do was kind of fill in that third hole, that you could have done that. I mean, it could be bad. It's early, but Tatum had a season that I did not see coming from many rookies at all, let alone, someone there at that spot who was going to be playing in a rotation with guys that dominated. You figured I guess not dominate the ball. Hayward's not that guy, but that, he would be maybe a 4th or 5th guy in your lineup. And the steps that he made even in the postseason were just incredible to watch as a rookie.
He was the second best player on the floor in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and I don't think it was close.
No.
Like, it wasn't close. He's ridiculous. And now we move on with life in Philadelphia. So an interesting offseason has already begun. Hey, listeners, I love anything that saves me time. Time is my most precious commodity, and buying tickets for people visiting New York used to be an ordeal. I'd have to check 19 secondary market websites. Am I missing a good deal? Am I getting ripped off? And SeatGeek has solved all those problems. It collates the entire secondary market into one place. It can help you get tickets for baseball games, NBA Finals games, although the NBA Finals are about to be over. Broadway shows, they help you with Hamilton, concerts, anything you want. One-stop shopping. It's fully guaranteed. You can shop with confidence. It has an easy-to-use system where you can tell if something's a good deal, under market, over market, good price, bad seating, obstructed view. It's all just clickable, easy to use. And best of all, right now, my listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek. That can be a pretty high percentage of your average sporting event or whatever. $20 ain't nothing. It's a good 6-pack of beer. Something like that. All you have to do is download the SeatGeek app, enter promo code Lowe, L-O-W-E, my last name, the name of this podcast, promo code Lowe, and boom, $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase.
Hey guys, this is Mike Golick. And this is Trey Wingo. You ever wish you could wake up early in the morning and have donuts with your dad and us? For Father's Day this year, you can. We're teaming up with Sport Clips Haircuts for a Dad's Day getaway. An all-expense-paid trip to ESPN, including a day spent with us on the show. Plus, my son Junior, it is for Father's Day, isn't it? Register for your chance to win online at sportclips.com/ESPN and make priceless memories.
No purchase necessary. See rules at sportclips.com/ESPN. U.S. only. Age 18 and up and 6/15/18.
We are on the verge of a sweep in the finals, which would give us, I believe, 12 days of alleged inactivity before the NBA draft, which were already signaling there will be no inactivity. There will be instant activity. In fact, it has already begun. However, let's talk about the finals. And 110-102. I thought last night was a pretty well-played game. Hard played. Smartly played until the Cavs kind of let go of the rope defensively. Obviously, a masterpiece from KD and a dud from Curry until he made that 1-3 that sort of signaled, okay, we're serious. Iggy looked all right. Not great, but all right. Livingston, I think, has missed one shot in 3 games in the finals.
Insane.
Yeah.
Draymond's defense at the rim remains fantastic. Cleveland, here's the interesting stat. Cleveland was 17 of 27 in the restricted area, 63%. The Warriors were 24 of 37. So they got 13 more attempts. The flip side, this is how the Warriors are so good. They let you get in, but once you're in, they don't let you get all the way, which sounds bad as it's coming out of my mouth. Paint shots outside the restricted area, so the little floater guys. Golden State, 3 of 7. Cavs, 12 of 25. 25 shots from that range last night. And part of that is when you have Draymond on the back line helping off Tristan and KD in the corner helping off. So there's just no space to do it. Like, there was that one play where LeBron drove on Curry and dumped to Tristan Thompson, who took a floater. And you like freeze frame that. He just has nothing else to do. Like, there's no one's open in the corner. No one's open. It's just, I thought it was a really intense game. I mean, they lost, but it was a fun game. I thought it was a fun game to be at.
Yeah, the Cavs certainly have more to work with offensively after Steph picked up the 2 fouls, because the Warriors' defense, when they're aware of Steph's foul trouble overreacts. Or maybe doesn't overreact, maybe properly reacts when Steph is on that LeBron switch and the defense just completely contracts. And then LeBron is so smart that he starts shredding them from the exterior. And the Cavs had that to work with. But eventually, Steph's foul trouble ceased to become foul trouble as the game moved along, and they didn't really have that to play with, and they just seemed to me to just run out of gas at the end.
Kyle Neubeck, by the way, of Philly Voice, part of the delay in the Sixers process, we're going back to the Sixers, this is all unfolding in real time.
Nobody cares about
was due to pressure from Jerry Colangelo, who threatened to damage team relationships in the event Bryan was fired. Damage is a strong word. Truth to be told, I pivoted off full-time Colangelo obsession once I got to the finals, so I haven't been beating the book. I will say this. Jerry's influence was a real thing in this case, and the Colangelo name was a real thing, and I do believe it made them be extra, extra, extra thorough. Whether he actually made these threats, if that's true and that's provable and that comes out, this just gets a whole lot worse. Okay, let's go back to the finals. Steph's foul trouble never developed into foul trouble. I do agree they overreacted a few times in the first half, sort of doubling randomly and overhelping. But look, the series is over. Cleveland is. Either of you think they win Game 4? Cleveland?
I don't think so. This isn't the Kyrie Cavs. They just don't have the same level of verve. And man, I miss Kyrie too. Just aesthetically, this Cavs team is so much more fun to watch. But with predictions, maybe I should be like Windhorst and just never do them. I think that's a good policy because we as writers only have but so much credibility, and by giving people a tangible metric by which to...
Wait a minute, isn't this the guy that predicted that the Warriors were going to win the title in 2014?
Seinfeld-esque, I choose not to run, Get one good one.
Also, I believe the only guy on the ESPN panel is right here, Chris Herring, who predicted a sweep.
Yeah.
And I said on Howard Beck's podcast X amount of days ago that I wanted to predict a sweep. I thought a sweep was the most logical prediction, but out of respect to the king, I gave him the gentleman's sweep game, and now I regret. Now I'm going to live with regret. You should pin that on your Twitter page when it happens.
That's literally why I think we all were kind of just in that place where, out of respect and kind of the assumption that LeBron will find a way to get at least a game, no matter how good this team is, and so I was kind of more inclined to do that as well. But then I was like, nobody ever remembers picking a 5-game winner. Just pick the sweep. Maybe a couple other people will do it too, but if you're wrong and you're off by a game and the same team that you predicted to win the finals wins, Nobody's going to remember.
You've disrespected Cleveland in that scenario. You've disrespected. You're a hater.
Well,
you're a hater,
yeah.
And you're disrespectful.
Maybe I should have gone with 4.5 because of the way Game 1.
You put your finger in the eye of NBA conspiracy theorists who say that they stretch these things out in order to make more money. You've defied these people, and I think it's worked out gloriously for you.
I do think everyone who doesn't want to sweep has been waiting for Scott Foster to ref one of these games. He's got to be on Game 4. So we'll see. I don't think they have the all-hands-on-deck rally that they had last year, where they came in and blew the doors off them.
Kyrie had 41 that game. I mean, LeBron was insane as well, but I don't know. It felt like at times that yesterday's game could turn into that.
Yep, I was just about to say that.
Then they only won the first quarter by 1 point.
When they held it to like 8, or maybe it got to 14-4 or something, but when they couldn't get it above that, because I told the people with the Warriors before the game, and they can't speak publicly, but we were debating how we both felt, and I said, if you're within 6 at half, I'm going to feel very good. You'll win, and that's what it was. And it could have been 10, doesn't matter. Like if you hang in, and I said, just don't get down 25-5. Like it seems like you do every other game in Cleveland. You're down 25-5. Like nothing. I've barely gotten to my seat,
exactly,
and it's 25-5. And it felt like that might happen. And I'm sitting there thinking, my God, they're really going to just throw this game away. But they just kept it within reach. Then it got to 13. They made 50-37. They made a couple plays, and at half, I was sitting next to Christina Douglas, my editor. I said they're going to win. Man, this is like
KD hit that big shot right before the half.
What was it at the end of the first quarter when Jeff Green stupidly fouled him? They inbounded to KD with like 2.5 seconds left, and he pump faked.
That little running.
It was a perfect time for a pump fake because I think with 2-point whatever, you do the initial pump fake, you can get fouled, and if he doesn't bite, you still have a little bit of time to get a shot off. So that was some very savvy. I know we don't want to credit such foul-seeking behavior, but that was part of the savvy KD performance. He also had one of those running into the guy, Tony Parker, Lou Williams / lurch in, fade away, and ones. That was also part of the game, and he was just such a smart game from KD among everything else.
Great passes too.
Yeah.
A couple really, like rewatching some of the sequences where he's just throwing some bullets and finding guys back door, and he looked great. I mean, the funny thing, and I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way. I feel kind of like the random guy on the message boards that wants to kind of yell at the clouds sometimes, because I watch them, and we just got done watching them play a series where they went 7, where they were down 3-2 at one point, and so automatically that should kind of like rid you of the ability to say like, this just isn't fair. But then when you watch Steph have a game where he started 1 for 14, and I was like ready to kind of put in my notes that this is the worst shooting performance he's ever had statistically. He would have been that way had he not hit those last 2 shots. But when you can do that, and Clay can have a pretty...
They got 21 combined from the Splash Brothers.
Nondescript game from him. Draymond had, 7-8 assists or something like that, but he didn't necessarily shoot that well. Now, you did get 13 of 17 from, who was it? JaVale...
JaVale and Bell were great.
JaVale, Bell, and I'm blanking on one other person that...
Livingston we talked about, that never misses. And Iguodala was even 3 of 4.
Right, and so these guys, like, they're not missing, but the fact that you can go from your 3 other All-Stars, have basically no scoring from them, and not efficient scoring at that, and KD can just kind of carry the load by himself. There were elements of it, I'm like, man, this almost isn't fair. And I know that they drafted these guys, and that KD... There were all sorts of things that it wasn't the Warriors' fault that they had the ability to go get them. But it's just like, wow, like that's a really heavy weight to carry that you can, a 2-time MVP can have basically, he almost had the longest drought of his career, 10 shots in a row that he missed from, I think, the end of the first until he got to the fourth quarter. And the fact that KD can just say, I'll do it. And I mean, just an amazing game, masterful game from KD.
Yeah, a team of Cleveland's quality, which is a good team, but not a great one.
Sure.
The Cavs are just a good team.
Yeah.
They just happen to have maybe the best player ever, but they're just a good team. You've got to be perfect and lucky, both, to beat Golden State once. And perfect is an exaggeration because you're never going to play a perfect game, but you got to have 5 mistakes on defense that kill you instead of 12 or 15. And last night they had 12 or 15.
JR had like 8 by
JR has been so bad. Green has been bad. George Hill... 2 of 6 with 4 turnovers. It just can't happen. Like, it can't happen.
Well, this series is making me, it's funny, after the Houston series, I was thinking, this is just the apotheosis of switching defense, and oh my god, this is the future, and it's incredible. And then I watch the Cavs in this series, and I think, maybe the league's getting a little too switch happy on defense.
This is what I wrote the other day. Like, Houston, you can quibble with, I don't like to watch James Harden play. I like to watch him play, but like, I get people who don't. You know, he's baiting the refs. He draws a million fouls. CP ISOing a million times a game. Like, you can quibble with, I don't like to watch 53s, all that. Houston, at a very basic level, worked their asses off at the right stuff this year to play the Warriors. They took it seriously. They watched film on it every day. They drilled the switching every day. They drilled when not to switch. They drilled when to help and when not to help. They took it seriously from September till June. The Cavs have not taken the regular season seriously ever since LeBron came back. Ever. And they traded half their team. And like, look, you pay that. You can't just watch the Western Conference Finals and be like, oh, that looks like a good plan. Let's try that. We've never done that before. Right. Let's do that with J.R. Smith and Kevin Love and Larry Nance Jr., who's all right. But like, you know, that's not how the NBA works at this level.
Well, and maybe it's, I don't know if it's poetic because basketball nerddom might never be poetic, but it's telling. It's illustrative that big Kevin Durant shot happened on what else? A busted switch.
Yeah.
You know, a situation where who knows what JR was doing, and it was a situation also where Rodney Hood could have easily fought over that screen if that was the plan. That would have been very easy for him to do.
So many plays like that.
So many, and you know that KD is dribbling the clock down, and he's just waiting for that moment where the switch is going to occur, and there's a little bit of daylight between when the decision is there to do it versus when it is actually done, and that's when the shot goes up, and that's when Cleveland's season ends. And so switching, maybe that is the way to play defense. Teams didn't do it for the longest time because there was this old school wisdom that, you know, a little guy is just he's just gonna humiliate a big guy guarding him. It's just the big guy's never gonna come back from that. And so the NBA was smart to get away from it, but I do wonder if switching is right for everybody. And if you need to just throw some different looks, if you need to not switch every single time. It was what made me laugh yesterday talking to, I think I was just joking around with Jaron Collins, Warriors assistant coach, and talking about whether he was ever great at switching, and he played for Jerry Sloan in Utah.
No.
And he said, no. Jerry wouldn't switch. He used to say, I want to be able to look at a stat sheet and know who's getting f***ed up. And maybe there's something to that there's some personal responsibility attached, and maybe some players need that personal responsibility, because if it's collectivized, you might see guys doing what JR does on those switches.
Last night was also the first time, and I'm looking at my notes again this morning, a little bleary-eyed, but I can't sleep after these games.
No.
I can't.
9 o'clock start.
But I get home. I got to my hotel at 1:30. I can't go to sleep. It was too good of a game. There's too much floating around in my brain. There's too much I'm thinking about tomorrow. You know what I realized this year? I feel like a European basketball player, because I realized this year, midway through the season, that Nickelodeon reruns Friends like endlessly at very late hours of the night. And so one night in LA when I couldn't fall asleep, I was like, oh, Friends is on. I miss these guys. I miss Chandler and Joey, and let's see what Monica's up to.
Are we so old that's the Nick at Night classic? Is that the I Love
First of all,
because they don't show Fresh Prince anymore, damn it.
No one, don't go back on another Fresh Prince rant with me, okay?
I got so many tweets about that.
And so in LA one night, I watched like 3 episodes of Friends. And also, I didn't get to the end of Friends. So there's Paul Rudd's in the mix. Look at that. I didn't know that. So that's what I do now. When I go home and it's 1:30 in the morning, I turn on Nick at Night, and Friends is off and on. I'm like Nikola Jokic. We can bond over Friends. I didn't know Paul Rudd got in the mix.
Ricky Rubio was wearing the Friends sweater at one point.
Friends is huge now. Friends is back. Friends is like Central Perk, travels around the country.
I've maybe watched 3 episodes my whole life. My roommate in college would watch it to fall asleep, and I'm like, I could never get into it.
Its influence cannot be denied. I think it was the first sitcom to also operate as a soap opera. I think that in of itself makes, in the canon of sitcom.
And teenage me, okay? 16-year-old me, I was rooting for Ross Geller to get the girl. I was rooting for him. 16-year-old nerd me.
You saw yourself in Ross.
I was like, because that's how you are when you're 16-year-old nerd. Like, if I just pine, if I pine enough, by osmosis, she will sense my pining and realize that I am the right one.
That generally is how it happens.
And then Ross gets super annoying as the seasons go. Anyway, I don't know what the hell I was talking about.
I was wondering where that tangent was going to.
I couldn't sleep is what I was talking about.
I'm with you on that one.
It was the first. So I was looking at my notes. It was the first game where LeBron looked tired, and he looked tired from the start, and you could see it on defense. Yeah. So there were 2 plays that I'm going to remember from that game that to me are just quintessential Warriors plays and quintessential why the Cavs can't beat the Warriors. With 2 minutes to go in the first quarter, KD and Clay run a pick and roll. Clay screens for KD. Clay slips the screen, cuts toward the rim, catches the ball, is inside the defense. It's a 4-on-3. LeBron comes off Iguodala in the left corner to cut off Clay. Okay, fine. Clay passes to Iguodala, doesn't want to shoot. And at that moment, you're like, good job, Cleveland. Possession's dead. Stupid Andre, will you just shoot? Kyle Korver, who was on Clay, rotates out to Iguodala. So now Clay is LeBron's responsibility. Clay just keeps on going to the corner. Nobody goes with him. LeBron doesn't follow him. I think he thought Larry Nance might follow him. Andre takes one dribble behind the back lefty pass, Clay 3. It's just, you think the Warriors are surrendering when they don't shoot, and then they just keep going, and it works. Yeah. The second one was in the third quarter. They kept running the Steph JaVale pick and roll, immediate pass to Draymond, lob to JaVale. They got a dunk, then they got a foul, and then the Cavs realized what was going on. And instead of hedging, instead of trapping, Kevin Love kind of stayed back. He just went up to the level of the screen. So what would happen was Steph would kick to Draymond, and Kevin Love would just slide sideways and take Draymond. There was no 4-on-3. There was no lob. Tristan took JaVale. And the Warriors read that, and on the second time Steph kicked it to Draymond, he knew Kevin Love's going to be coming over to get me, but he's going to be backpedaling. Immediate step-up dribble handoff with Steph. Kevin Love's like, oh, God, I'm going backwards now. I got to go forward. Steph splits the defense, pass to Draymond, lob to JaVale again. It was so beautiful, and again, it looked like a possession that they had stalled out because they had forced the ball to Draymond with no advantage, and they just keep going. They just keep going, and the Cavs are not equipped to keep going with them. It was really beautiful basketball.
This is what a lot of us wondered about, though, and it's weird because I feel like over the course of the season, it almost feels like a stock market or like an investment where if you watch it every day and you're looking at the ups and downs and the 4-game win streak after we've kind of counted the Cavs out to a certain extent, you're going to get kind of lost in that conversation and that debate. But, you know, I think a lot of the analysts, you know, the ones that write the way we do, that watch the game the way we do, there's a reason teams don't make the finals with the sort of defense that the Cavs had. And granted, they've had 3 different versions of this team over the course of the season. But generally speaking, I can't remember whose stat it was that I saw. No team that's ever been ranked this low defensively had ever even won a round in the playoffs. And so you take that, you give them 3 rounds, mostly because of LeBron, but their defense still isn't really good enough to deserve to be at this stage against an offense that is maybe the best one we've ever seen in history, that can figure out how to kind of navigate something that even if you take it away from us once you've run it and you become predictable to where we know this is what you're going to do every single time, you don't think that they're going to go back after a game, even if they beat you, that they're not going to go and tweak things to figure out how to beat you consistently if you keep running out that same unit and that same scheme to beat us? Like that, you can't do that. That's why the Celtics, even though they're young, and I said this, I wish you could have taken LeBron and put him on that Celtics team and advanced the Celtics. Because then maybe they have enough star power to make it interesting.
They can this summer.
And I said this in January. They played that game against the Warriors in January. They played 2 really great games.
The Celtics have played the Warriors well for 2 straight years now, at least.
They played them very well. And I tweeted at one point, look, I'm like anybody else. I'd love to see LeBron make the finals again because it's LeBron and it's entertaining to watch him go up against this sort of challenge. He's a great player. But at some point, you'd love to see a team that has the defensive chops to play against this Warriors team. I mean, the Rockets did that. And they did it somewhat shorthanded at times. But you need a team that can challenge them and make them work on offense. Otherwise, if you get into a scoring bout, I think the Cavs scored like 113 or more in 4 of the 5 games last year. It's not about their inability to score. They can't defend.
That Cavs team, this is a discussion for another day. I really believe that was a championship caliber team.
Yeah.
That would have won the title in like half of NBA seasons at least. I think that was a legitimately great team and a top 5 all-time offense.
They were
like,
so good.
Absolutely ridiculous offense. Are you ready for another Bryan Colangelo update from my email?
Oh.
A statement has been released from Bryan Colangelo. Are you ready? It's a good one.
Okay.
Are you guys in suspense? Okay. He starts off by saying he's grateful, blah, blah, blah. We're going to skip that part. Who cares about the grateful lead-in?
Yeah.
I vigorously dispute the allegation that my conduct was in any way reckless. At no point did I ever purposefully or directly share any sensitive, non-public, club-related information with her, my wife. Her actions were a seriously misguided effort to publicly defend and support me. And while I recognize how inappropriate these actions were, she acted independently and without my knowledge or consent. Further, the content she shared was filled with inaccuracies and conjecture, which in no way represent my own views or opinions. While this was obviously a mistake, we are a family and we will work through this together, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on to say thank you for hiring me, etc. That seems to me to boil down to, I never told her any of this stuff, and it's wrong. It's inaccurate.
Sounds like a lawsuit.
It doesn't pass the smell test to me. It does not pass the smell test to me.
It sounds like he's talking about a media member. That's what it sounds like. It's crazy to me. Just how did she get this information? Was she making calls? Was she doing some shoe leather reporting? I know he says that there were inaccuracies.
No,
there are a lot of accuracies.
Let's say this: does the videotape with Markelle Fultz shooting on his back exist? Because if it does. Someone gave her that information. Exactly. Someone told her about it. And I'll say this. I'm 99% confident that tape exists.
By the way, I mean, wives of people within an NBA team talk to a lot of people. There is a chance. I'm a little suspicious. I'm a little doubtful. I'm trying not to be naive. But there is a chance that she could have just been having these conversations with other people. I think... At the very least, if we're assessing it from a PR perspective, that is a response from Colangelo that is the best response for preserving what's left of his reputation. I think defiance is the only way you can go. It's the only way.
It's a rough one, though, because at this point, like, he's getting down to... What I just took from what Zach read out loud is that, okay, I might have told her stuff, but she didn't convey it properly, and there were inaccuracies in what she said. Which, you still told her.
You know what else there were? Accuracies.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, there were some inaccuracies, but that still kind of leaves like a whole wide open.
Like Nerlens Noel's a problem in the locker room? Accurate.
Right.
Markelle Fultz is doing weird stuff with his trainer? Accurate.
Yep.
So...
And it's still problematic, the fact that any of that stuff was out there. I mean, this is... the same reasons we were saying it was a problem before. It's still a problem, even if she got certain elements of it wrong. She was also tweeting. It's not like she was writing this for a newspaper. So it's bad because the way it got out there was a way that none of it should have ever gotten out. Accurate, not accurate, whatever.
But he has no play to make whatsoever in this scenario.
No.
I think this is the only play he can make, is defiance and vigorously. I like the use of vigorously there, too. I think that's the only thing you can do. That's the only thing you can do if you're him. Even if we'll roll our eyes, even if we'll go, that's not very convincing under the circumstances, that's probably his best option.
I like this. I want to do more podcasts with stuff. I should do a July 1st podcast. Let's just podcast free agency live.
Yeah. Ad hoc PR assessments.
Nothing's going to happen on July 1st because you know why? LeBron's not going anywhere on July 1st, so the whole league, it'll be like...
Stand still.
It'll be like Kyle O'Quinn accepts player option. Breaking news. Okay, we have 13 minutes before Stephen A. Smith comes in and forcibly takes us out of the studio. The Warriors are about to win their third title in 4 years. If you want to separate into pre-KD, post-KD, whatever, it's 3 titles in 4 years. They've outscored opponents by 10.8 points per 100 possession in the playoffs. They have the best defense in the playoffs by far. That 10.8 number, since 2000, here are the only teams that have a better playoff scoring margin. The Spurs in 2014, plus 11.6 per 100. Last season's Warriors, plus 13.6, which is the greatest of all time, which I didn't realize until I looked this up today. And the 2001 flip-the-switch Lakers, 13.5, just below the Warriors. So the Warriors, 3 out of 4 titles, 2 of the 4 greatest point differentials of the last, let's say, 20 years, rounded up. It's time to start talking about, now they'll have chances to win 4 out of 5, 5 out of 6, 4 out of 7, whatever, where they fall historically. If they win, assuming they win 3 out of 4, they pass the Heat, they pass the Bad Boys, they pass the Rockets, they probably pull even with or past the 80 Celtics, who won 3 in 6 years.
Wow.
The Spurs, you could frame the Spurs lots of different ways. The Spurs either won 5 in 15 years or the Kawhi one is sort of a different era, and they won 4 in 9, which is pretty damn good. The Lakers of the 80s won 5 in 9 and 3 out of 4. You can go back to the Russell Celtics if you want. To me, the post-Russell era, you're talking about the Warriors, the Lakers three-peat team, which I think they will surpass. And even if they don't three-peat, if they win 4 out of 6 or whatever, they surpass them. And then the Bulls are at the top, and I'm missing somebody. Who am I missing? And the 80s Lakers. I think I think that's the territory we're in. Take any of that. Where do we start talking about this team?
I think that frames it, and I think that's why maybe people are turning to the individual arguments rather than the team arguments. I think there's just something about how indomitable this team has been. Not as much as people think right now, right? How indomitable were they in the first half of Game 7 against the Rockets? How much did people think that the Warriors were making the league unfair at that particular juncture? So there is a recency bias. I think they could get there. They could be recognized on the level of maybe even surpassing the 80s Lakers and Celtics, which is hard to fathom.
I think the Celtics will be surpassed.
They will be surpassed.
3 and 4, look, it's the same number of championships in a smaller number of years. The Lakers three-peat, it's either a three-peat or it's 3 out of 4, right? They made the finals 4 years in a row as well and lost to the Pistons. I think so. Three-peat is historically significant. You could say they pulled even with that team already, and given that team fell apart, they will surpass that team next year.
A lot of it's just going to be about managing that, to reference the 80s Lakers, staving off that disease of more, disease of me. I don't think anybody knows which one it is, but staving that off.
It's a disease.
It's a disease. It's a disease of some kind. And you especially have to look at KD when it comes to this, because he doesn't necessarily get the credit on the level that one would expect just in a vacuum for his exploits in the finals and getting what looks like will be a second finals MVP and having the 2 big shots to effectively end it, one right over LeBron, having one of the greatest finals games ever. He's not getting that credit because there's this sense that he should be doing this or that he attached himself to this bandwagon, and I wonder if that just becomes tiresome to him at a certain point, and this just doesn't fulfill the needs that he wants fulfilled. I don't think he'd ever say that, but I do know at least his people, they want a reality eventually where he's considered the number 1 player, where there is a new king, and that just doesn't seem to be happening. It seems that LeBron's status is secure because he keeps playing so well, because he won that championship with less help in 2016, and there's just a different aura to him at the end of games than there was back in the early Heat days. And I don't know what Kevin Durant would have to do to be considered the number 1 player, but I wonder if that is the element that is the biggest element that might make this thing unstable going forward. It's just whether he's placated in terms of ego and emotion.
I mean, that's part of it, and I think the other part too is once we get to a point, we're going to figure out at some point if these guys ever stop taking pay cuts, whether or not they're willing to continue to pay for all this. I mean, at some point, I know everybody always makes it sound like that'll happen. It's very expensive to make that happen. I know Clay has gone on record now saying that he's not leaving this.
Well, that's where the Leica Bitcoin supplements come in.
So you've got that part of it, but I do wonder too, because there's so much of this that we discuss in the moment. And I mean, when you live on Twitter, it's really easy to kind of assume that that's how everybody feels all the time, and it's mostly younger people. Historically, I don't know that people are gonna. The KD thing was really unprecedented from that standpoint. I don't know how people are going to feel about that historically. Obviously, people have a feeling about it now, and people feel like, how weak a move is that to join a 73-win team that you almost took out yourself, that you could have taken out yourself? Why do that? And maybe it's something that KD doesn't feel enough validation from. I thought it was really interesting the other day, by the way, that he said that he did this because he wanted validation from his peers. That he went to this team, he wanted to win titles because it would mean more validation. So I don't know if all of a sudden, if there'd be a moment where he feels like it's not enough to win finals MVPs and still be doubted that he's that great because he's doing it, on the backs and, with teammates that are some of the best in the league.
Did you see CJ McCollum's Twitter last night?
I did. That was fascinating
because I thought that was something
that maybe just existed in the Twitter swamp among super fans of teams, and I didn't necessarily know what to do with that perspective, that Warriors fans don't truly love KD, that it's still Steph's team. There's certainly an element of truth to that, but how much of that is based on the loudest fans on Twitter versus normal people in the Bay Area who might just be excited that Kevin Durant came to the Warriors? But to see CJ McCollum give voice to it as an active player in his prime, that was interesting because that's certainly going to get back to Kevin Durant, and I would love to know Durant's perspective on that, and if he feels similarly, and if that's an issue. I doubt he would acknowledge it publicly that it would be an issue to him, but he doesn't get that kind of love, for better word.
CJ tweeted last night, LOL, he still shouldn't have gone there, when someone said he was playing well for the Warriors, and then he said, y'all can call me whatever y'all want, LOL, KD, a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest ever, whether he would have went to GS or not. I just would rather see him on another team.
Well, it's one of those, I'd rather see him, but he owns his own talents. I understand the perspective. I do. I understand the perspective of, I would rather see an NBA that has the fully operational Oklahoma City Thunder and the Rockets and the Warriors duking it out. That this seems unfair to me, this seems like a tilting of the table, and I'm against it. But he ultimately owns his own talents. I don't think his perspective is that it's somehow unfair for him to leverage how great he's gotten himself over his lifetime. None of us would have that perspective. None of us, how many of us would have taken a professional opportunity but decided against it because we just feel guilty about being so good at our jobs? I can't claim that because I don't think I'm at that level, but I'm just saying hypothetically to anybody out there. So I understand McCollum's perspective, but I also understand the KD perspective, which is that he doesn't owe anybody anything on the basis of how great he is. It's sort of silly that we view it that way, and we would never view it that way if it were football, if it were Randy Moss when he joined the Patriots. We don't say, that's unfair, you're too great, don't do that.
It's a smaller sport.
I will say this. It is unprecedented. We all wrote it on July 4th or whatever day it was. It's unprecedented in the age of the players, their collective shooting ability, but also Klay Thompson's the fourth best player on the team. And if you look at the fourth best player on Boston and the Lakers and the Bulls, it ain't anybody as good as Klay Thompson. Dennis Johnson wasn't as good as Klay Thompson. Whoever you want to say, Michael Cooper, wasn't as good as Klay Thompson. Whoever, Byron Scott, Michael Thompson, Bob McAdoo, Lake career, whatever. They're going to win another title. If they win another title, to me, the only ones left for them to pass are the Lakers of the 80s and the Bulls, and I don't think anyone will pass 6 of 8. I think if they win a fourth in short order, they outdo the Spurs, and it's just the 80s in the post-Russell, so not including the Mike and Minneapolis Lakers and all that. So we'll see. We've got to wrap up. Stephen A. is going to take the studio. Chris Herring from 538, Ethan Strauss, the comeback player of the year from The Athletic. Thank you guys for joining us.